The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect the policies and the position of Now You Know.
Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint. Together with experts and newsmakers, we'll make sense of the week's biggest issues and stories. My name is Barnaby Lo in tonight's conversation. A death now shrouded in mystery and controversy. When 23-year-old flight attendant Christine Dacera's untimely demise first surfaced in media reports, police were sure that there was foul play. Case solved, according to Philippine National Police Chief Sinas, while echoing the conclusion of investigators that Christine was raped and killed. But bits and pieces of evidence and witness accounts are raising more questions than answers. The police's own autopsy report states aneurysm as the cause of death and does not mention the presence of semen. Prosecutors say there isn't enough evidence for rape and homicide charges. Because of this, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara has ordered the NBI to conduct a separate investigation. And joining us for this discussion on the death of flight attendant Christine Dacera is NCRPO Chief Brigadier General Vicente Danao Jr. Thank you, sir. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this show tonight on a very busy day.
Yes, good evening, Barney, and televiewers, good evening.
Pasensya na po, parang medyo mabagal po yung internet, ano? Sa akin,
yeah, no problem pa. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I hope that we can we're going to be able to do this interview in full. And joining us later on the show as well is one of only two forensic pathologists in the Philippines, the chair of the Department of Pathology in the UP College of Medicine, Dr. Raquel Fortun. Good evening, Dr. Fortun. Thank you for joining us. All right. So we'll go back to you later, Dr. Fortun. We'll start the show with General Danao. General Danao, I'm not going to waste any more of his time. I'm going to go to the first question. So, sir, meron pong mga reports na tapos na raw po yung pangalawang autopsy. Can you confirm this? And kung tapos na nga po, what can you tell us about the results of this second autopsy?
Honestly, sir, the second autopsy, I haven't read the report yet. Although I heard from the news that the second autopsy was requested by the family and it will be conducted by the National Bureau of Investigation. So as of now, I haven't received any copy yet.
Okay, so hindi po autopsy ito ng PNP. Autopsy po ito ng NBI.
Yes po. Bali, yung second autopsy po yon. Yun po yung narinig ko na the DOJ Secretary tasked the NBI to conduct or help in the investigation, forensic investigation.
Okay. Ang PNP po will not conduct any more autopsies.
As far as I know po, natapos na po yata yung kinandak na examination po on behalf ng Philippine National Police.
Okay. All right. Okay. So theoretically then, sir, in your professional experience, itong second autopsy na ito, ano pa po pwedeng makita sa second autopsy na to? And especially after the fact na naembalsa mo na po yung katawan. And lumipas na rin po yung isang linggo na po, no?
Unang-una po, yung result po kasi ng toxicology, para sa akin po, sir, the result of toxicology is very important. Okay. It could lead, yes, opo. It could lead po doon sa cause of death, no, doon sa toxicology. Okay, so napaka-importante po noon kung ano ang magiging resulta noon para sa akin, sa experience ko po. Yes, considering po na there are no witnesses who could give the account on what really transpired on that night before she died.
Mm.
So it's more of
Okay.
the yes.
So hindi na po tayo tumitingin dun sa autopsy. Hindi kumbaga para sa inyo hindi na po reliable yung autopsy. Tama po ba?
Mas maganda po sana kung meron pong results ng any forensic pathology or any technical aspect po na mas makakatulong po sana doon. Kasi sa ngayon po kasi wala po tayong nare-receive or wala po tayong nakausap na magbibigay ng account on what really transpired katulad ng sinasabing rape. Okay? So yung results po dapat ng autopsy is very important para sa akin. Kasi unang-una,
Okay. So
yes, opo.
right. So pero iba po yung usapin ng autopsy, tsaka iba po yung usapin ng toxicology report. Tama po.
Yes, opo, definitely. Kasi iba-ibang results po ang kalalabasan po niyan eh. Pero yung autopsy pa kasi, it will determine diyan if there was really a sexual abuse, no, if there was really a foul play that happened on that night, no. So malaki pong bagay 'yon kung ano yung kalalabasan po ng autopsy.
Okay. Pero hindi po ba lumabas na dun sa autopsy report na wala naman indication ng semen? So hindi
Yun
pa
nga
po
po.
ba natin nako-conclude na walang rape na naganap?
Para sa akin po kasi it does not mean na pag walang semen, wala pong rape. Okay? Kasi pwede pong mangyari yung rape, gagamitan mo ng condom. So it is not an indication na pag nang rape ka, walang semen. Okay? And the mere act of penetration, not even na malabasan ka, is already considered as rape.
How about the
Kahit yung
fact na
attempt lang.
right? How about yung po nakalagay sa autopsy report na healed lacerations? What do you make
Para
of that?
para ang pagkaintindi ko, hindi po ako medical expert po, pero pagkaintindi
Yes.
ko po kasi, pag sinabi pong healed, ibig sabihin, it happened before pa, not necessarily on that day.
Okay. So, sa makatuwid, based on the autopsy report, yung pong nakita na natin, yung pong inilabas na ng PNP, hindi po natin makonclude kung rape
Yes,
yeah.
yes, definitely po. Hindi po natin, we cannot judge by that alone doon sa result ng autopsy that there was rape. Ako mismo, hindi ko po masasabi talaga. Kaya nga po nag-react ako nung nakita ko yun eh.
Pero nabanggit po ni General Sinas na meron daw pong evidence of rape na hindi pwedeng i-divulge sa public. Would you know anything about this?
Hindi ko po alam, sir. Hindi ko rin po narinig kung nasabi niya yon.
Okay, so as far as you know, what we've seen in the autopsy report is what you have.
Yes, opo. As far as I'm concerned, personally, nung nakita ko yung documents at hand, yung sinasabi pong rape, hindi po basta-basta may establish.
Okay. What do you expect then to find in a second autopsy report? Meron pa po ba? May bago pa po bang pwedeng makuha dyan?
Ang sana po, sir, sana po doon sa second autopsy, if ever man na maging successful po yon, dahil nga po na-embalasan mo na, yung result po kasi ng toxicology is very important. Why? Because doon po sa magiging resulta po ng toxicology, doon po lalabas most probably kung ano yung reason kung bakit nagkaroon ng ng sudden death, no. It could be baka nasobrahan sa alak kasi ang dami pong alak eh. Okay. Ang dami po kasing alak na nakita. Ang dami pong bote ng alak, I should say, na nakita po doon sa. So it is presumed na yung mga boteng yon may laman, ininom, in short. Okay,
Yes.
so yun pong isa. And then it could have been baka somebody or someone induced something in her drinks. Yun po ang gusto nating makita ron eh. Baka mamaya meron pong naglagay ng gamot or baka may naglagay ng party drug. So yun pong dapat natin ma-determine, no? Kasi baka
Okay.
that could be one of the causes.
Yeah. Actually, meron pong isang kasama, si Christine, na meron po siyang ini-insinuate that there is a Mark Anthony Rosales who might have spiked Christine's drink. Are you looking at this angle?
Actually po, yun po ang isang tinitignan po natin dahil during one of the interviews I also heard na mayroon nga po yan, yung sinasabi nilang si Mark, nag-insinuate na mag-drugs tayo. Parang ganon. Pero again, sabi ko nga, still that is not conclusive dahil it is not stated therein na nilagay yung drugs doon sa mismong drinks.
Kailangan makita po sa talk.
Yes, dapat someone would testify. For example, sasabihin natin itong si Mr. Juan de la Cruz. Okay, in-insinuate niya na magdroga tayo. Nakita ko ngayon na nilagay niya talaga yon. Yan, pwede yon. Ang tanong din diyan, anong klaseng droga to? Kaya nga po yung result ng toxicology is very important.
Okay, then let me ask you about toxicology report then. Was this test done before the body was embalmed?
Yun nga po sir, ang nakakalungkot po talagang sabihin. Hindi ko po alam kung talaga bang nakakuha ng blood sample po para po makuha yung toxicology. I have to admit talaga, ako nga po talaga sir, sabi ko sa inyo, I really reacted when the embalming was done first before the autopsy. Okay, dapat yung autopsy muna bago ma-embalm yan eh. Kasi para mas marami tayong makuha ang specimen samples.
Right. Pero yung autopsy, alam na po natin na ginawa siya after na-embalm yung
Yes,
katawan.
opo.
Pero yung
Opo.
toxicology, do we even know kung na-test for toxicology yung katawan ni Christine? Or are we just hindi kasi
Assuming.
malinaw sa akin
Yeah.
kung meron ba talagang toxicology test na naganap.
Okay. How can you conduct a toxicology pag wala ka na makuha fluids?
Okay.
Kasi tapos na po yung
So,
na-embal mo. Wala po siguro. I'm just presuming kasi hindi po ako yung doktor, hindi rin po ako yung medical legal. So baka wala po.
Okay. All right. So in all likelihood right now, wala pong nangyaring toxicology test.
Kasi I was informed na there were several tests that was done. Ang tanong ko, anong klaseng test yun? Okay, so pati nga po sa akin.
Yeah. Bakit parang hindi po malinaw pati sa inyo? Yung dumadating sa inyo, yung nire-report sa inyo, hindi po ba dapat malinaw, since you're NCRPO chief, hindi po ba dapat malinaw na sinasabi sa inyo na these are the tests that we did?
Yeah,
ito yung mga naging resulta.
Yes, opo. Sa ngayon po kasi sir, wala pa po. Unang-una, because it was done by the crime lab and crime laboratory office is different from NCRPO. They are not directly under me. Okay, so it is a different unit, although they are operationally under me, but it is a different unit. So kung sakali man po na may magi-instruct diyan, it should be the officer in charge or the investigation on case or investigator on case should be the one directing kung ano ang gagawin doon sa crime scene.
Okay. All right then. Kung sakaling wala pong toxicology report na ginawa at gagawin ngayon yung toxicology test, pwede pa po ba?
Well, I just hope po sana na meron. Sana po kung meron man talagang na-conduct na second autopsy, I just hope na sana meron pang makuha.
Okay, so now we can only hope.
Yes, sir, opo.
Okay. Which means, sir, that it's possible na hindi na po natin malaman through forensic and physical evidence kung ano talaga yung nangyari kay Christine?
Ako masasabi ko po, most probably yes. Kasi sa ngayon, if you will ask me personally, the only hope para po talagang magkaroon ng linaw to are the accounts coming from the witnesses who were at that time also there when it happened.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the witnesses then, ano? Meron pong dalawang kwarto, 2209, 2207.
07,
So
yes.
you're basically back to square one with your investigation? Tama po ba?
Yes, sir. Balik, as of now, I have to admit that we are on backtracking. Kasi ang policy po kasi natin dyan, kung saan po yung hepe, kasi may hepe po yan eh. The chief of police is there. Basically, they are the first responders. So, sila ang magte-take charge niyan. Now, kung medyo nagkaroon ng konting kakulangan, so may elevate po yan. Ito na po yung SITG na kinrate natin. So, dito na po yan sa regional office. Pag-aaralan and we will be guiding them kung ano yung mas magandang approach, kung meron pa bang kulang na dapat natin i-collate, pieces of evidence na dapat pa nating i-comply.
Okay. So in this case then, what are the investigators doing differently this time? Ano po yung mga anggulo na tinitingnan?
Unang-una po kasi, ang pinakamalaking tulong po sana rito are the results, no? Laboratory results coming from, it could be chemical test, ano ba yung mga nangyari doon, kung may laman ba yung mga alak na ginawa doon. Okay, meron din pong mga nakuhang pieces of evidences doon. What are the results? Kasi may nakita pong granules doon. Ano ba yung granules na yon? It could be asin, it could be droga. Okay, kasi may mga nakitang granules po doon. So, parang crystal-like, hindi ko rin po masabi. Sabi ko nga po nung isang araw, it could be baka NPCL naman yan. Baka naman asin. Bakit kamo? Kasi meron pong meron pong tequila eh. Okay. So, pero nonetheless, sabi ko, imbestigahan nyo na maayos. Lalong-lalo na sana, yung toxicology dapat. It is very important.
Okay. So kumbaga, medyo malabo na to get evidence from Christine's body, pero meron pong mga sa scene na pwede pang makuha na ebidensya.
Yes, sir. Yes. Number one dyan are the identities of the persons around before her death.
Okay. All right. The identities of the persons. Speaking of the identities of the persons. Kasi alam na natin yung mga tao sa room 2209. Pero yung room 2207, bakit po nahihirapan na i-identify yung mga tao sa room 2207? Kasi po dun sa surveillance footage, makikita po natin na pabalik-balik si Christine between room 2209 and room 2207. And alam na natin kung sino yung mga tao sa room 2209 at nagkwento na rin po sila kung ano yung alam nila. Pero yung mga tao sa room 2207, hindi natin alam kung sino po sila.
Yes.
Bakit po nahihirapan na i-identify sila? Wala po bang pangalan yung hotel? Hindi po ba dapat di ba may contact tracing forms tayo?
Actually, yun na po ang ating inaano ngayon. We're leading to that. Okay? Kasi po, medyo hesitant yung hotel eh. Sa pakikipag-operate. No? Actually, yan po ang inaalam natin ngayon. Sino ang mga nasa loob ng 2207. Kasi dalawang grupo po to actually. Sa pagkaintindi ko po sa pagbabacktrack namin sa kaso, ang talagang grupo po ni Christine dito is yung nasa 2209. Okay? Now, somebody from the group invited the other group which is situated at 2207. Yung
Okay.
grupong 2209, hindi po rin nila kilala yung nasa 2207 except the other guy na siyang nag-invite. Okay. Yun. So
Okay.
kaya yun po ang hinahanap natin ngayon na link. Who is that guy na nagdala nung other group from 2207?
Alright. Pero po, hindi nyo pa kilala yung mga tao sa 2207.
Ako frankly, hindi pa po namin kilala lahat yung mga nandun. So, kaya nga po I'm encouraging po the group from 2209 to really come out in the open para magsabi po, magkwento para malaman po natin.
And the hotel doesn't have a record of their names?
Yun nga po ang laging tinitignan natin. Kasi unang-una, that hotel is considered as a quarantine facility. Okay? They allow those people to be there in spite that is considered as a quarantine facility. Okay? So yun po yung mga tinitignan natin. Ang dami pong violations na nangyari doon eh.
Oo nga eh, pero...
Kasi,
yes sir, pero wala silang record ng pangalan? Are you saying na wala silang record ng mga pangalan ng mga nasa 2207? Yung hotel?
Hindi ko po alam kung nakuha na ng investigators natin on the ground, pero yun pong isang wala pa po akong nare-receive na report. Baka meron naman po, kaya lang titingnan natin kung kanino mga pangalan yan.
Okay. Hopefully meron po kasi medyo matagal na po, more than 1 week na po, no? Kung meron record yung hotel. I suppose, dapat
Yes,
alam
opo.
na po ng pulis.
Dapat.
Hindi po ba?
Dapat.
Yeah.
Unless otherwise, Barney, unless otherwise that they are hiding something.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit because you mentioned quarantine hotel po yung City Garden Hotel sa Makati. And you had mentioned na kaya na embalsa mo yung katawan ni Christine bago na autopsy is because ito po yung policy or yung protocol during this pandemic. Tama po ba?
Yes, sir. I haven't read the whole policy, pero I think there was a policy that was crafted last year and it is because of the pandemic. Marami po kasing nangyari before, marami po kasing in-undergo ng medical legal na namatay na lang, found dead, no? And then ang policy yata is bago nila i-autopsy, dapat i-embalm muna, lalong-lalo na pagka COVID probable or COVID confirmed ba ang tawag dyan. So parang ganun po yung naging policy.
Right. I understand po pag COVID suspect then maybe that should be the policy. Pero how will the PNP solve crimes like this or any other killings during this pandemic kung lahat po nung mga katawan, mga victims of killings ay i-embalsa mo muna bago i-autopsy?
Kaya nga po, yun nga pong kinwestiyon ko doon sa doktor na nag-conduct po nito eh. Bakit ganun ang naging naging direction niya na alam naman niya sana na ang cause of death ay hindi naman siguro ang naging kwan po niya doon is namatay bigla eh. Kaya siguro baka he presume. Ito assumption ko lang po to He presume
Yes,
or
sir.
he assume that it could be COVID, parang ganon. Pero sabi ko nga sa kanya, be as it may, alam mo naman na it is something to do with the party, so dapat he should be prudent enough to really conduct the autopsy muna before the embalming.
Okay, so are you saying now that this shouldn't be the protocol even during this pandemic?
Kung ako lang. Kasi marami po tayong, madali naman sana nating ma-determine kung naging COVID yan eh. Unang-una, there are symptoms. Kasi ako po, sir, sa totoo lang, I am a COVID patient. Okay?
Oh, I'm sorry,
So,
sir.
yes. Yes, I'm a COVID patient. Kaya ibig sabihin, before, hindi ka naman siguro biglang mamamatay dyan eh. You
Yes.
have some symptoms, inuubo ka, ganyan. Siyempre, as an investigator, tatanungin mo yan. Okay?
Mm.
Ano ba to? Inubo ba to? May sakit ba to? May simptomas ba to? So kung ganon, parang sa feeling mo, meron symptoms ng COVID, definitely, ganon ang magiging action mo. Pero sa tingin mo, katulad niyan, meron pong anak, meron pong involved na mga guys around. Hindi ka man lang ba nag-isip na baka there is foul play or whatsoever? Especially
Mhm.
pag yan ay pinatay through sa saksak, baril, bigti, or mga ganon. So, dapat na-determine po yan initially ng investigator on case if there was foul play that could have
Mm.
led to the sudden death, parang ganon.
All right.
And
So
para sa
your
akin po, dapat talaga in-autopsy muna before in-inval.
yes. So in short, sir, you're criticizing your own men with the way
Uh,
that
i-
investigated this case.
well, in as much that I do not wanted to do, pero ganun po talaga.
Okay. So then do we expect to see accountability? I mean,
De- de-
yung mga
defi- Definitely po, definitely. Accountability on the investigators, on the lapses kung meron man, no?
mm,
Especially doon sa doktor na nag-conduct ng autopsy.
what kind of accountability? What level of accountability can we expect to see?
Regarding po sa culpability kasi if meron man administrative
Mhm.
lapses, that will be
Mm.
determined by his own office, which is the crime laboratory. Okay? And it will be decided upon by the higher headquarters. Bali, it is beyond
Mm.
by level po, sir, yung
Mm.
yung
Okay.
maging sanction sa kanya if ever.
Okay. And will the PNP take responsibility or accountability over the safety of the presumed I don't want to say suspects po, yung mga persons of interest po, because some of them are saying na medyo threatened na po yung safety nila because nga daw po ay na trial by publicity na sila. One of them saying na may mga sumusunod sa kanila, binivideohan sila. So, is there something that the PNP can do about this?
Well, unang-una po, baka naman po these are just some speculations nakikita nila or baka naman presumption lang nila pero actually wala naman pong ganun. Wala po silang dapat ikatakot dahil unang-una, there's no present case as of today. Okay? Para i-hold sila o para huliin sila unless otherwise, someone will come out in the open at sasabihin niya, itong si Mr. Danao, yan ang nakita kong sumaksak o yan ang nakita kong nang-rape, yan ang nakita kong sumakal. So as of now, wala po silang dapat ikatakot, kundi mas maganda po na they will come out in the open and cooperate with our law enforcers.
Mm-hmm. And of course, meron pong separate investigation yung NBI. Ano? How do you see this complementing? Tuloy pa naman po yung investigation ng PNP, hindi po ba? So how
Yes
do you
po.
see that complementing the PNP investigation and NBI investigation complementing each other? Kasi po sa ngayon, there's a lot of confusion. So do you see these two investigations complementing each other or creating more confusion?
I would rather say that this is a welcome development, especially on the forensic aspect, forensic investigation, no? So, especially so that the family sought the assistance from the NBI. So, I welcome this as a good development para mas mabigyan po ng linaw yung nangyaring aberya on that day.
Okay. And given na si DOJ Secretary Guevara mismo ang nagsabi na may pagkukulang talaga dun sa investigasyon, and you said that may pagkukulang talaga dun sa investigasyon, how do you think this is affecting the credibility of the PNP?
Yes, I must admit sir, that there was really uh, pagkukulang dun sa nangyaring case na to. Kaya nga po, nag-form tayo ngayon ng SITG. Ang nangyari po kasi rito, sir, the case was already filed before the court when I read the whole case folder. Okay? Ang purpose po siguro kasi nito is unang-una para po, because of the eagerness lang po siguro ng ating kapulisan na immediately may file yung case. Ano? Although sabi ko nga, sensationalized cases like this, dapat pinag-aralan na mabuti. Okay? Unless otherwise, kasi sa experience ko po kasi, sir, inquesable talaga yan if someone or somebody would witness against anybody there at nasasabi niyang, nakita ko talaga, etong si Juan de la Cruz, nirape niya si ganito, tinabunan niya ng unan, kaya namatay yan. Parang ganon. So, ibig sabihin, there is already a witness who can withstand on what really transpired on that night. So, kung ganon po, yung merong ganon mga instances, yan, masasabi natin, talagang pwedeng i-inquest. Pero in the absence of which, katulad niyan, lalabas po kasi lahat puro circumstantial eh. Ang tendency po kasi talaga ng isang investigator, pag may namatay, kahit na anong klaseng pagkamatay, be it natural death, natural cause, automatic mag-iimbestiga po yung ating police. And magiging persons of interest dyan are the last persons po na nakasama. Okay? So, yun po talaga yun. Then, and they will be subjected for clarificatory questions doon sa what happened.
Yeah, and should the Makati PNP not have released information about this case to the media?
Dapat po. Ang alam ko po kasi, all the information na nangyari, as what I have heard, dapat kasi dyan, unang-una, yung cases na katulad niyan, nilabas ka agad na rape with homicide. Kaya nga po sabi ko, can I see the folder? Nung nakita ko po yung folder, sabi ko nga doon sa ating hepe, how did you say na it's rape with homicide? We cannot even establish yung rape. Yung homicide pa kaya. Okay? O kaya nga sabi ko nga, I have to admit, sir, na medyo hilaw ng konti. Talagang hilaw yung case.
Okay. All right, sir. We appreciate that. We appreciate your honesty. Just one last question, sir, because there is a post by the PNP Medical Legal Chief on Facebook, Dr. Joseph Palmero. He on the post, he was commending Dr. Michael Sarmiento, who was the one who did the autopsy, and he said that Dr. Sarmiento did not succumb to pressure from the Dacera family to change the cause of death. What is your comment on this?
Frankly speaking, sir, I haven't read yung comment na yan. But it could be according to the doctor who made the report, no? Yun siguro yung kanyang appreciation of facts on what happened on that day. But siguro it was just too early for the Makati City Police to announce the cause of death is with homicide. Kasi para sa akin po, I look at the case. If you will call it homicide, she died of aneurysm. Okay? What caused that aneurysm? It could be baka sobrang na-stress siya o sobrang na-hypertension siya. What caused that hypertension? It could be dahil sa sobrang alak, coupled with drugs. Yon. Ngayon, paano mo sasabing homicide? Pag sinabi mo kasing homicide, if the drugs, kung ang naging cause po ng kanyang death is true doon sa intoxication coupled with drugs, sino ang naglagay ng droga? Okay? Is it voluntarily na ininom niya? Kung voluntarily naman, ininom niya, so who's to blame? No one, definitely. Especially so pag ma-prove yan na it is a party drug. So kung voluntarily niyang ininom yon, no one is to be blamed, definitely. But pag yon ay in-induce sa kanya without her knowledge and somebody put it there that caused her death, doon po pwedeng mahulog yung homicide.
Alright. Napakarami pa pong tanong. Ang dami pa pong butas ng storya, pero maraming salamat po, General Vicente Danao Jr. Thank you so much for your time, for taking time to do this interview on a very busy day. Marami po yung trabaho na I understand, meron pong nangyaring aksidente dyan sa kampo. Siyempre,
Opo.
pista po ng Nazareno, medyo problematic din po. So,
No problem,
thank
sir.
you very, very much for joining us on this show. We really appreciate your time. All right. So now we move on to our next guest to provide perspective on this case. She's not involved in the case per se, but Dr. Raquel Fortun is, like I mentioned at the start of the show, is one of only 2 forensic pathologists here in the Philippines, and she's a very respected professional in her field. Dr. Fortun, welcome once again to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Fortun. Marami na po kayo nasabi all throughout the week. So, thank you so much. At nandito pa rin po kayo kasama namin para magpaliwanag tungkol sa forensic pathology in general. And I want to start with what you think were the first and most glaring mistakes of the police. Of course, na-mention na rin po ni General Danao what he thought were the most glaring mistakes of police investigators in Makati. I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the most glaring mistake is embalming the body before doing the autopsy. Tama po ba?
It's but one. Just one. Ang nakikita ko kasi dito, ang pinakamalaking problema, we really don't have a system wherein automatically this death should have been investigated the way it should have. Like, kasama yung handling of the body, kasama yung examination of the scene where it happened, and then getting statements from people, and then with the blanket in a mindset of I'm going to find out what happened. I don't have conclusions yet. Let's see where the evidence brings me. That's how it should be. So I don't think that was done, all of it, in this case.
Okay. Medyo napuputol po kayo, but if I heard you right, you're saying na sa simula pa lang, doon pa lang sa crime scene, or if there was even a crime committed, doon po sa scene sa hotel, hindi nila in-examine yung scene kaagad and hindi nila kinuhanan ng statements kaagad yung mga persons of interest and witnesses. That's the first mistake. Tama po ba?
Yeah, that's standard procedure. That should have been done automatically. You run after documents as well. Like this happened in a hotel. For sure, you've got a paper trail somewhere about who came in, who is in there, why are they there. Hindi naman yan open space or open place or a private residence.
Right. Hindi nga nila ma-identify pa yung mga tao sa 2207, ano?
That's kind of unusual.
Yeah. Like I was saying to General Danao, I mean, it's been over a week and they still can't identify those people in 2207. So I feel like that's really unusual.
And it's kind of odd, actually, for the police to practically beg people to come forward and volunteer information. But you're the police. There are ways to investigate. And you should have the authority and the means to do it.
Right. Okay. But just going back to the embalming of the body, would I be correct to say that given the fact na hindi nasunod yung lahat ng mga dapat na mga first procedures sa pag-examine ng scene. But the body was embalmed before it was examined. Should that mean or would that mean na game over na po? Wala na tayong makikita dun sa body.
Well, in this particular case, it's deplorable. Looking back, sayang. Kasi even the police are stressing that toxicology, which is so important. But if you did not get your samples for testing, for examination, what will you work with? Yun yung problema. And that's so frustrating. In other cases, halimbawa, nabaril ka, and then there's a delay in the examination, ita-transport mo pa yung katawan, etc. Then, you weigh the consequences, risks versus benefit. Maybe go ahead. I've done it before. Sige na, i-abound nyo na para mailipad lang sa Manila or something like that. But in this particular case, it turns out, really the circumstances point to possible intoxication. And in hindsight, that was a bad move.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you lose po ba? Just for basic information lang po. Well, what do you lose when you embalm a body?
Well, embalming is chemical preservation. The way we do it right now, you have to access the body. And one thing they do is they make an incision in the abdomen. Okay? Small incision. And then they will insert a very long tube. Maybe mga 2 feet long na tube yan. Attached to rubber tubing. And then you have a machine. First, you suck out fluids inside. And it causes a lot of damage because intentionally, the embalmer pushes and pulls in a multiple direction. So, multidirectional yan. Next, after aspirating, they now pump in their mixture of fluids. Okay? And it's a pampabango, may formalin, may alcohol, may pampakulay, etc. So, iba-iba yan. So, you're introducing to the body chemicals. Right? And then, they also access the arteries to the head because the face is very critical to an embalmer, pinapreserve yan. And particularly, they access the circulation. So, kung kukuha ka ng sample for toxicology na blood, it's too late.
Too late. Okay. And if, for example, there was semen before the body was embalmed or any other fluid in the genital area, mawawala din po yun. Pwedeng mawala din yun. Hindi na makita sa autopsy.
Well, if you're going to do what we call a sexual assault forensic examination, actually, sa scene pa lang, ipoprotect mo na yung body. And that's why, very critical din to, like yung mga kamay ng patay, ilalagay mo yan sa supot. Tapos, babalutin mo, clean sheet yung body. Ilalagay mo sa body bag, dadalhin mo sa morgue. And then in the morgue, that is when you do your collection. And we're talking trace evidence. We're talking you getting also reference materials like kukuha ka ng buhok from the scalp, buhok from the pubic area, and so on. Yung swabbing, ang classic is lahat ng orifice sa bibig, sa anus, sa puwerta ng babae. Okay, so routine yan. And then anything else on the surface which you might be interested in, if you're in doubt, just collect. That's the thing. So may sequence yan. Pagdating mo ng morgue, ang priority mo would be the material that most likely will be easily lost. So mauuna tong trace evidence analysis. Trace evidence gathering. And so on. Even before your autopsy, right? And then your documentation with photographs. So may sequence. So nag-iisip ka. In other words, the examiner knows ano ang priority, ano kaya ang gagawin ko una, saan ko gagawin, anong kakailanganin ko. So pinaplano.
Mm-mm. Pero hindi na magagawa lahat to pag na-embalm? Or pwede pa rin? Are there
Well,
still some of those things that you can still do?
itong sexual assault forensic examination, it's too late. It's too late to do your swabbing, to collect the trace evidence, to get the nails. Kasi by this time, you know naman na the body had been touched, cleaned, washed. Yung face na yan, malamang may makeup na yan, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no point. And it's been several days after. I said for toxicology, I would not bother getting blood. The report says there was no urine found. I don't know if they really checked. Kasi sabi ng mga toxicology labs, even swabbing the urinary bladder might be enough kahit na wala kang urine. But if I were bored and I had a chance to examine the body again, aside from rechecking the first autopsy, all the external and internal findings reported in the medical legal document. For toxicology, I would attempt one thing, and that is to aspirate eye fluid, what we call
Sorry, again?
Eye fluid.
Eye fluids, sa mata po.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you have vitreous, the technical name is vitreous humor. There is fluid in the eyeball inside. And you can aspirate that. It's very easy actually. It's very easy. You get a syringe, a small one, even a tuberculin syringe. Pwede yan kasi mga 1 to 2 ml lang yung makukuha mo. So you do it from the side of the eye. You can see the tip actually from through the pupil. So you aspirate carefully, and then using the same syringe, you do it on the other side. And this fluid can potentially be still analyzed chemically. Ang advantage now in a post-embalmed individual is that hopefully, cross your fingers that the embalming fluid was not able to permeate the eyeball. Kasi hindi naman siya directly sa, nasa blood vessel mo kukunin.
Okay.
But the risk is still there that you might have embalming fluid contaminants there.
Okay.
But that's the only sample I can think of right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, all hope is not lost then. Meron pa pong paraan. But I think the burial is already tomorrow. So kung gagawin po nila yan, they have to do it now?
I'm not too sure what has happened. I believe the body has been flown south.
Yes, to General Santos. Yes.
I'm hearing reports that the body had been examined a second time by the Bureau of Investigation. I really don't know what they've done, but if I would do it the usual way. Just like today, I had a referral na post-embalmed, actually a little decomposing, weeks dead. The body is still worth examining. Okay? And what we would
so we're still worth examining. Okay, I want that clear. I want that clear.
Like the body that we did today, you still document everything. Like, how did you find the body? How did you get it? In terms of appearance, where was it placed? What was on it, like clothes, etc. Kasama yan eh. What's the basis for identification? Any other identifying marks you can see? We take a lot of photos, hundreds of pictures, digital pictures per case. And then you look at the previous examination. I'd be curious. What kind of autopsy incision was done? And then externally, internally, what kind of internal exam was done? Were the organs taken out and dissected? or just taken out or even left inside. And then try and identify injuries if they're there. So in this particular case, I'd be very much interested in the cause of death stated in the medical legal report. Where is that uh, aortic aneurysm that supposedly ruptured and caused death?
Mhm. Okay. I just want to clarify. So hindi po walang kwenta yung second autopsy. Meron pang pwedeng makita dyan. I just want to be very clear about that because people are parang already saying na parang, well, what can we still see in the second autopsy? It's already been a week. The body has been embalmed.
Well, it depends a lot on the examiner. What is the examiner going to try and find out or see or check? I would do it differently. I would do it one way. And that might not be the same thing that that examiner might be after. We have a procedure for doing it. So, it depends on who's going to do it. What's the objective? Isa pa yun. What's the objective? Kasi if the objective is to prove something, malabo na naman yun kasi you already have a conclusion. That's not how forensic science works.
Okay. It doesn't work the other way around. You have a conclusion and you try to prove the conclusion. You have to have evidence and then conclude. Tama.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Hindi po natin alam how they did the second autopsy and they haven't released any information about that. So let's just, if you don't mind, let's go to what we know. Yung pong laman nung unang medical legal report. Okay. So you mentioned the cause of death is ruptured aortic aneurysm. What exactly is this? And is it possible na mangyari po siya sa isang 23-year-old woman?
Well, I have dissected this medical legal report over and over again publicly and explained. All right? That aneurysm that is described here is located in, well, it's really specifically stated, the aorta. And the aorta is a big artery, the biggest one, coming from the heart, looping, and then going down. And it says here it's in the descending portion of the thoracic aorta. That means that's the part in the chest. Okay? So, klaro about the location kasi aneurysm can occur in other areas of the body. Like, halimbawa, meron kang pwedeng aneurysm in the brain, pero maliit yun na artery. Tapos, pwede rin namang sa abdomen. Okay? Pero ito talaga specific. Sinabi, chest daw, chest.
Okay.
Tapos, description na may punit. Hindi naman sinabi gaano kalaki. Sabi lang transverse. Sinabi sharp and jagged edges. Okay? But that's it. That's all we know about the description. And to me, it's lacking because it basically does not explain how this led to death. Kasi nakamamatay dyan, kapag pumutok nga ang aneurysm, wherever it is, yung hemorrhage. And hemorrhage na nagpo-form ng ano yan, parang big blood clot, hematoma ang tawag. Obvious na obvious yan. Makikita mo talaga. Kasi kung napunit lang blood vessel, tapos wala kang hemorrhage na ganyan, mag-iisip ako tuloy, baka naman, ano lang to, artifact. Napunit ng mortician, halimbawa, or something like that. This is imaginary. Kasi ang patay, hindi nag-hemorrhage. Pag buhay ka, magdudugo ka. And that explains death. So, that's not here. It's not here. Yung hematoma na yan. Secondly, a 23-year-old na nag-aneurysm, na nag-rupture, medyo unlikely yan. Kasi ang pinaka-common cause ng aneurysm, diseased yung aorta. Like high cholesterol ka, hypertensive, and so on. So that develops mostly in people na mas matanda. Okay, 50 plus. Tapos, sabi nila, may mga nag-argue, yes, I'm open to all of these things. Eh baka naman kasi nga,
Assault
drug
po.
related.
Yung assault po. Could it be a reason for this ruptured aneurysm?
What kind of assault? What kind of assault?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of physical force was applied? Yes, the artery can be injured. You can be stabbed. Pwedeng mabutas yan. You can be shot.
Mm-hmm.
Nasa isang aksidente ka, tumilapon ka as a pedestrian or decelerating force, sakay ka sa sasakyan, pwedeng mahatak yan eh. Yung sa chest mo, yung organs mo, pwedeng mahatak na ganyan, pwede yung mapunit. But in all of these cases, whether nasaksak ka, nabaril ka, or na-lacerate yan from decelerating injury, may hemorrhage yan. Okay?
But
so that's strong.
Based on the injuries listed in the autopsy report, and relative to the cause of death, which is ruptured aortic aneurysm, meron po bang connection?
There is no injury significant enough in the chest. Actually, there's nothing. No injury in the chest area that would relate to that aortic finding. All the injuries reported were very minor, small abrasions and contusions on the lower extremities. Sa legs lang. You know that this person was not stabbed, was not shot, was not in a vehicular accident. So you don't have the setting for injury here.
Well, what about CPR? They say meron naman mga nagsasabi na maybe it's the force of the CPR.
Yeah, I've heard that. Okay. CPR, you do chest compression. So sternum yan. Sternum, okay? But you have to know anatomy. The aorta, to begin with, is a very strong tube. Okay? It's resistant to something, just compression like that. Matibay yan. And precisely, it's like that because it should contain blood traveling there in high pressure. Kasi pag pump ng dugo yan eh. High pressure yan. So dapat matibay yan. Okay? So that's one. The other is, the aorta is located inside. Malalim. Kapag nag-chest compression ka, hindi yan naaabot ng chest compression. Ang usual is nagkakaroon ka ng contusion dito sa sternum or breastbone. Minsan, doon sa pressure, nagbe-break yung ribs. Pero anterior ribs yan. So, hindi typical na maaabot yung aorta from CPR.
Okay. How about intoxication then? Could that be a cause?
Medyo mahirap i-connect yung intoxication of anything to an anomaly in the artery that would cause it to burst, to rupture. Okay? Intoxication, depending on what it is, how much of it is there, the individual, kasi mamaya susceptible siya, can actually kill by itself, depending on the mechanism of action of the drug or drugs. So you don't necessarily see a physical, gross or even microscopic abnormality that will tell you, ay, ito yung effect ng drug na ito. That is how difficult poisoning cases are. You don't typically see specific autopsy findings. And that is why your laboratory will tell you most of the time, ay hindi ko alam kung ang ikinamatay, ito ang cause of death niya. And that would be found in the toxicological report. That is how important the tox exam is.
So I mean, people can die of intoxication, whether it's if and let's just say it's not aneurysm, but people can die of intoxication.
Definitely, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, and so that's why you're saying that it's important that we have a toxicology report.
Yes, especially for this case where it is known that prior to finding the decedent unresponsive, the setting was there. She had been drinking. She was observed to have manifested, drunkenness. So she was under the influence of something, and I think at the minimum there was alcohol intake, ethanol intoxication. So minimum, what was her, what we call the blood alcohol concentration? How much ethanol did she have in her blood?
Mm-hmm. And if it's intoxication, what would be? I'm not saying in Christine's case, just in general talk. If it's intoxication, what would we usually see as the cause of death in a death certificate or in an autopsy finding?
Well, how does it kill, or
Yes.
just the
How
death
does it kill?
certificate?
Yes.
It depends on the substance. But if you take ethanol, if you take ethanol as an example, alcohol lang, yung drinking alcohol lang, it's a depressant. So, nervous system, so you have cardiorespiratory depression. In the end, pwede ka mamatay from that.
Okay.
But that's the simplest way to put it. You've got, what if you have other drugs put in, or in combination? Then again, a toxicologist would be able to detect that in the system, and then you will need an expert opinion to study. Okay, this is the effect of this drug, and this is the effect of this other drug, but taken together, they might produce something worse.
But aneurysm and intoxication, medyo malabo po.
It's kind of a stretch. It's really a stretch, especially if you say it's in the aorta. There's another thing that we failed to discuss. What if this aneurysm is caused by an inherent problem in the aorta? Something natural. And yes, there could be some diseases, congenital conditions that could cause a weakness in the wall, etc. But, if the autopsy was done right, then the examiner must have found something, but it's not even described what the surface is, what the wall looks like. It's been mentioned because sometimes the aneurysm, the blood goes first within the wall. Okay? And then it grows. So the hematoma is in the wall, and then it grows bigger and bigger. And this is the condition called dissecting aneurysm. So it dissects the wall of the aorta. It's not even here, right? So there's no description anywhere of a diseased aorta. So I find that lacking. So if I'm going to do a second examination, I'm going to check that. Right?
Okay. All right. How about the claim of rape? Is there anything in the autopsy report that would indicate rape? General Sinas was saying the bruises, the contusions. But some witnesses or friends of Christine, who are also persons of interest, are saying it may have been injuries from when she was being carried with the wheelchair. Kasi po, I think wala daw pong footrest yung wheelchair, and so tumatama daw po yung legs niya doon sa wheelchair. Is that possible?
All right. Okay. Yes, when we do the physical exam, and that's why you do a very detailed external exam. You try and pick up everything that you can, including, as described in the legal report, small abrasions, small contusions as reported. Yes, that's correct. However, for you to decide was there sexual assault or not, was there sexual contact or not, that may go beyond uh, just a physical examination. Okay, but let's focus on the reported injuries. And
Mm-mm.
that's why it's important to document them well. What are they? Where are they? How big? Etc. But to begin with, they're so minor, they're so superficial to
Mm-hmm.
contribute to, right. But then your point is you want to reconstruct what happened. So how could they have been sustained? In the first place, as described, they're just in the lower extremities, particularly anteriorly or the front, scattered front thigh, front lower leg, front foot or dorsum of the foot. Okay, you have to look into the circumstances. How was she found? And yes, I would consider that because I understand it was really understood, well known that she was found unresponsive in a bathtub. There was an attempt to raise her from the bathtub and remove her from there, do CPR on site, and then later on transport her, and they used a wheelchair. And they're
Mm-mm.
saying that she could have sustained all of these things during that activity. I would agree. I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are these injuries consistent with sexual assault? But they're so non-specific. But yes, sometimes we see injuries that could be consistent, again, depending on location, distribution. Like, for instance, if someone held an extremity tightly, as to restrain, what we see are multiple small digital pressure marks or contusions. So they look like round, grouped round contusions, and they can be seen on the wrists, etc. In sexual assault, if you're trying to push open the thighs, the inner thighs, then you're going to see them there. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really totality of evidence. Was there sexual contact? There,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you may see acute injury in the genital area. You may see bite marks somewhere. You check the breasts. Uh, was there seminal emission? If you're
Yeah, but in the autopsy report, there's nothing in the genital area. If I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong. That would indicate sexual contact, recent sexual contact, right?
well, physical examination will not really distinguish recent from
Mm-hmm.
previous sexual contact. That's overhyped. The appearance of the hymen and so on. But yes, in the medical legal report, there's nothing here that would say uh, conclusively that there was sexual assault. And also,
Mm-hmm.
uh, importantly, if there was uh, contact, if it was consensual or not. So
Mm-hmm.
it's specific.
Okay, so it's inconclusive then. I think we can all agree on that. Ang sinasabi po ni General Danao, now we're going to have to rely on testimonies, and he was also saying na the scene of the, I don't want to say crime again. I really hesitate saying
We
it's the
call
scene
it
of
a
the crime, but the
death
hotel
scene.
rooms where, yes, the hotel rooms where Christine was and where Christine died, binalikan daw nila, and they have examined the substances there and the things that have been left there. Pwede pa ba, Dr. Fortun, na makita from these physical evidence and from testimonies? Can we piece together this puzzle even without credible forensic evidence?
Well, I think admittedly, there had been drinking. You got you've got statements already saying that, oh yes, she had been drinking, we had been drinking. Okay, so
Mm.
uh, stressing the finding of those bottles of liquor, etc., at the scene at this time does not amount to much. So even if
Mm.
there was drinking, next question is, was she drunk? How drunk was she? And again, what's the blood alcohol concentration? And it boils down back to, did you get a blood sample for the laboratory to analyze? So it still does not tell you what she died of.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot
All right.
put circumstances, and then just jump to the conclusion. Okay, there had been drinking, then there was drinking, then therefore she was drunk, and therefore that's the cause of death.
Okay. So at the end of the day, then, would you say that it's possible we will just never find out exactly what happened?
Well, again, I'm not part of the investigation. Let's see what's going to happen because I think it's still ongoing. Uh, they're still doing a second one. I don't know. I hear reports of uh, that are still pending. What are
Mm.
they still going to do or try? Um, so I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. You don't know. You're not part of the investigating team, of course. You don't know. And if you don't, okay. Last question, then, if you don't mind answering this question, I just want to get your comment about what you think this particular case says about police work in the Philippines, about the criminal justice system in the Philippines. Do you think that this is isolated, or have you seen too many of this kind of case?
This is a very typical case in the Philippines where we mess up the investigation. And it happens every day. It happens to many people, the rich, the poor. Uh, it just so happens that this one got blown up. So you've got a lot of people commenting on it. It's in the news. I predict that we're going to forget this one in the same way the others. We just move on from case to case. Uh, it may be controversial today, but we're not going to learn anything from it, I bet, because over the years we've had similar cases. But what's scary about this one is it might go the same way that other cases went before. That is,
Mm.
I hope we do not accuse the innocent of something that they did not do and then go all the way to court and actually convict them of crimes they did not commit. It has happened. And I see this in the Philippines that unfortunately our criminal justice system is so bad that it's so unfair to everyone concerned, both the
Mm.
victims and the accused. We just don't use forensic science enough. We just don't emphasize physical evidence enough. That's why you hear a lot of talk regarding uh, testimonial evidence.
Hmm. Well, that's really sad to hear, and I really hope that they use you and Dr. Lim more. There's only two of you, and I hope that you'd be able to train more forensic pathologists, and that our authorities will be able to use them in the future. I hope. I'm hearing pessimism from you, but um, I really hope that this case will change the investigation system in the Philippines. All right, okay, that's all the time that we have for this episode. Thank you very much to Dr. Raquel Fortun for joining us in this episode, for providing very important insight and perspective, for educating us all about how these cases should be investigated. Thank you very, very much. Again, my name is Barnaby Lo. This is Viewpoint. We are live every Saturday at 6 in the evening. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages of Now You Know. Good evening, everyone.